The following episode contains mature themes and strong language. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to History and Mystery in Kansas City, the history podcast about all things unsolved and unexplained in Kansas City and the surrounding areas. I am Laura.
And I am Talia.
And we are talking about Lorenzo Gilyard Jr.
When you originally were like, hey, for the next episode, we have to do a killer. And I was like, all right, cool. And you were like, so find one, pick one out. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did a general search on my work computer, KC killers, like murderers and stuff. And I saw that there was one in particular that I had to do without knowing anything about it, simply because of his moniker, the KC Strangler. And I was like, I even sent this to you. I was like, what is this shit? The Scranton Strangler? Just from The Office? And you're like, wait, what? And so then you looked at it, you're like, oh yeah, we're doing this one. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, all right, run of the mill, like killed 13 people, like possibly sexually assaulted them as well. And I was like, all right, run of the mill murder, I suppose, right? And then you start to actually do the research, and you're like, okay, this basic case turns into such a drama-filled story, and very tragic. But spoiler alert here, doesn't end well for him. He's in jail. He killed 13 people. You deserve to be in jail for the rest of your life. However, it is tragic his childhood, how he was raised and everything. And abuse does tend, research shows, to generate a cycle of abuse and criminology. It's a hard cycle to break out of.
Did you find in your research that he was actually abused, or is his family just fucked up?
His family was incredibly fucked up. And there were, I guess there were interviews where the sister was interviewed. And she states that their father was incredibly abusive to them, as well as, like, he was not only, like, a very violent person towards them. He wasn't just manipulative and all that stuff. He would hit the children many times, and he would molest and rape them. Which, in my mind, if you're going to do that to one kid, you're going to do that to all of them. And this is coming from multiple sites that I've read about his past. And all of the sites word it exactly like that. So I don't know if it was that he raped just his daughter, or if he raped all three of them, which, either case, not a good thing. And then he decided he was going to sell his own daughter to wealthy friends and customers. There's a special place in hell for people like that, I think we can all say. She was forced into it, but then she stayed in that life until she was incarcerated. That's all she knew. And she felt trapped, probably. And she was arrested and incarcerated, not for prostitution on its own, but for the death of a client who probably was also, I mean, let's be honest, it was probably self-defense and he probably deserved it. But nonetheless, that's why she was incarcerated. He was also incarcerated for the possible murder of another prostitute. And in some of the interviews and stuff that I have, some of the research and stuff that I dug through, it does state that his brother was horribly abused. His younger brother, Daryl, he was a known gang member, and he was a drug addict. And it turns out there was a drug-related murder. He is also incarcerated for life. He will never see the outside of the prison. But from what I hear, from my understanding, he is a model inmate. He even pays $1,000 a month in incarceration fees from his, I guess he won a lawsuit prior to his arrest for essentially him losing his legs. And so now he's spending the rest of his life behind bars. But he's he won like $4 million from that lawsuit. And he's putting the money towards where he's at. He's a model inmate. And good for you for trying to turn your life around. It's a little sad that's too little too late. But you're trying your best a little bit more than your older brother. Are we sensing a pattern here in his family? Lorenzo was abused as well. And he learned how to not upset his father. And in doing so, became a bully at school, an abuser towards women, and an abuser towards people that he thought were belittling him just because of their existence, essentially. He was a terrible person, still is a terrible person. One thing I'd like to say is it's not just because there are studies that show that abuse creates a cycle of abuse. Does that mean, especially if you're listening to this and you've dealt with abuse and everything else like that, that you yourself will become an abuser? You and everybody else has something known as free will and a choice. And your decisions and your choices will dictate how you end up and how everyone you know will end up in a way, and your future. And this guy, 100% of the time, chose the wrong choice. He grew up in a dysfunctional family. I get, but it's not an excuse. There are plenty of people on this planet who have gone through horrible things in their life, like he had. But it's how we decide to overcome those obstacles that makes us who we are. He still to this day will claim that he's innocent and that he did not know or have any relations to any of the women that were involved. Lorenzo, he finally fell in love with his wife, his first wife. At least that's what everyone thought. Incredibly abusive for the 5 years of marriage. And the only reason why he married her was because she became pregnant with his kid. But that facade could only last for so long. He may have been sweet and kind to her at first, but to everyone else, he was not that way. And then it wasn't until after they got married he became worse and worse. Incredibly sexually, a sexual deviant towards women. And I think that's when we start to get the first couple of rapes.
So I'll start by talking about his crimes. In 1969, he was arrested for rape. He was again arrested 2 years later for rape. February of 74, arrested for rape. And 5 months later, raping a 13-year-old girl. And for all of this, he was only convicted of sexual acts with a minor and received a whopping 9-month sentence in Jackson County Jail. In 1979, he raped a woman but was acquitted. So in 10 years, he raped at least 5 women and spent 9 months in jail. In 1973, Gilyard was arrested for assaulting his wife. In February of 74, he was arrested for raping a 25-year-old exotic dancer. She identified him as the attacker from a photograph, but charges were dropped. 5 months later, he was arrested again for raping another 13-year-old girl who was the daughter of his friend, and he raped her on the banks of the Missouri River.
That there shows just how unjust our system is.
Yeah.
9 months?
Yeah, a whole 9 months.
And then
for traumatizing this poor girl for life.
For traumatizing multiple people.
Yeah.
And because it's not just one person, that's multiple people.
Yeah.
And two of them which were underage.
But he really only had the jail time for the 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Or the 13-year-old victim, who was a daughter of his friend, changed her testimony, and that's why the rape charges were dropped. And I mean, he's a manipulator and he's intimidating.
Yeah.
And as a 13-year-old girl having to testify against him, that would be so terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't imagine what she was feeling. And I don't blame her for if she did change her mind, or
No.
he didn't see any jail time for the other victims, which is ridiculous.
And I personally am on the belief that we need to, when it comes to sex crimes and aggravated crimes of that nature, that you need to boost the penalties for them. We need to boost those federally. We need to boost them to the same levels as murder, because you are literally changing those people's lives.
And a lot of them start out with that and end up murdering people.
Yep. I mean, look at his sister.
Yeah.
Look at his brother.
Yeah.
That's just one of those. That's going to be one of those stories. It's funny because we did recently that one story before the bonus episode. So I guess the last episode we did was pretty tragic and sad. But this is frustrating on a different level. It's tragic on a different level. He literally had the opportunity after his final victim to live free for over a decade.
If that was his final victim.
Yes, if that was his final confirmed victim. He had gotten married again. He started to live a lavish life. Yeah, 100%. I just recently saw a interview with him and what's his name? Pierce Morgan. And the entire time, Pierce was like, this is what people are saying. Like, here's some of the evidence and stuff. And it was just, as soon as he would say one word, he would get so aggressive and threaten to leave and all that stuff. Like, and Pierce was like, well, I want to do this interview with you. But at the end, he was just like, all right, fine, go. Like, this is getting annoying. Like I'm tired of walking on eggshells. And you can kind of see how that kind of behavior and the way that he would talk to people, even just a simple like, well, your lawyer said that you did this. Are you saying that you didn't tell your lawyer that? Wow, it starts getting really aggressive. I don't really. He's like, I don't, as far as I can recall, I didn't. I don't recall. It was like, you would have known. You would have known. I mean, unless you were literally having sex with like 50 people that day, and then like, one of them died. Like, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. I highly suggest you go watch. It's insane.
Yeah.
Just how fast he becomes aggressive.
Yes.
I could understand the reason why his victims would change their story.
Yeah.
It's insane the amount of intimidation and fear you can get from this person. I genuinely think when he says, not to my recollection, he probably is being honest and saying, I don't remember them because I murdered them and for like, it was 5 seconds of heaven, murdered them and was on with my day. I don't remember them. I really didn't care to even get a look.
Yeah.
But that's tragic.
He just considered them trash.
To consider a teenager or just anybody else trash, like, they could be a trash person. You can think that they're a garbage person. Like, this person is quite literally the trash man.
Mm-hmm.
But to consider them trash to a point of taking out the trash in a literal sense is horrendous and it's awful.
Yeah, that's his other alias, is the garbage man or the trash man or something like that. And a lot of people say that it's because he was cleaning up the streets and he was, killing prostitutes to take out the trash and all this stuff. I think it's because he's fucking trash.
Oh, 100%. It's insane. No remorse, high quick aggression. And you can see that's literally the only emotion he probably feels.
Yeah. I mean, he acts like he's the victim, honestly.
Yeah, he does. He's like, oh, I was just living my life. I was eating some pie at a Denny's, and I got arrested because of somebody else's murders. And I was gonna go home after I ate this pie to my lovely fourth wife, who I won't admit that I probably abuse. It's sickening.
Yeah.
It's sickening. Oh my goodness. There should be an additional charge just for that.
And his lies don't make any sense either because, like I said earlier, he's a manipulator and he's a good liar, but his lies don't make any sense.
They don't add up.
So he is telling the police and Pierce Morgan, I never even saw these people. I don't know the victims. I don't know what happened to them. But yet in his trial for his defense, he said, well, his lawyer said, well, my client had sex with all of the victims, but then a serial killer came in afterwards and killed them all.
Yeah. And he even said to Pierce Morgan, like, I didn't tell my lawyer that. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lie.
Yeah. So how do you explain your DNA all over them?
Oh, somebody must have put it on them.
And he
What?
doesn't understand DNA either because he's
No.
like, Pierce Morgan was saying, there's a lot of compelling evidence, the DNA evidence, and
The police's evidence.
Gilyard's like, oh, DNA.
That's what the police say.
Yeah, that's what the police
we're
say.
more likely to believe the police than the person literally that has their DNA on somebody. Do you understand what DNA is?
Yeah, I don't think he does.
This guy. So frustrating.
So, in 1977, April 17th, the body of Stacy Swafford was found. She was a missing teen that was living on the streets.
What year was this?
77.
Okay.
She had left home several months before. Her body was laying face down in a vacant lot. She had been strangled. From all of the newspaper articles, most of the victims were considered as sex workers in the Kansas City Star.
Yeah.
Some of them were just found in areas where prostitution had occurred, and we don't know what their background was.
Yeah, it could neither have been confirmed nor denied.
Right. And some of them, and it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter if they were prostitutes or not, but she was found in areas that prostitution occurred. And so the police just jump to the conclusion. So all of these people that they find, they're like, oh, prostitute, because you're in this area, which is bullshit. Then in 1979, he was arrested on charges of assaulting a young couple, raping the girl, and threatening to kill her fiancé. And even though the victims identified him as their attacker, he was acquitted in September of 1980 due to lack of evidence. And that's the one that I read, that there was a hair consistent with his found on the victim, the female victim.
Yeah.
But of course, you can't say that a hair belongs to a certain person if there's no DNA.
Yeah.
So back then there was no DNA that they could even run. And even now, sometimes you have hairs that don't have enough DNA on them to identify with a victim or with a perpetrator.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
Do you have to have the follicle?
it has
or-
to have the whole root.
Oh.
And if you don't have enough, you can maybe test for your mother's side, the female side of the DNA, but not the whole thing. There's mitochondrial DNA, and then there's nucleus.
To at least get the possible family line. Okay.
So back then, they didn't have anything. So all they could do was look at it under the microscope and go, it looks like his.
It looks like a hair.
But the victim was like, yeah, that's the guy. So he was acquitted for that one.
Jeez.
Then the next, and when I list these homicide victims, these are basically ones that have been confirmed as his victims and were connected in some way with DNA.
Okay.
The next one is 15-year-old Gwendolyn Kazine, found January 23, 1980. She was 15, and she had a wire wrapped around her neck and wrist. She was clothed but did not have shoes, and she was found behind 1312 in the Paseo by a neighbor. The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was strangulation, obviously, and we're going to notice a pattern here that that's his favorite way.
That is why he is known as the KC Strangler.
Yes.
Strangler?
Strangler. Sometimes it was with, things of opportunity like pantyhose. Sometimes it was
Shoelace.
with, shoelaces, just things nearby. Her father reported her missing one day before she was found, but she actually had been missing a week. So
that's kind of missing a week, and the father finally reported it the day before she was found.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awful parents.
Awful. Yeah, that's 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Then you slap it in, especially in the 80s.
Yeah.
Although this was also during that time where you would get that, right before you would get the TV commercials to say, it's 9 p.m. Do you know where your kid is?
Yeah.
So I suppose that, different generation. So
Yeah. I mean, with us growing up, it was be home before the streetlights come on.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but and again, the police and the newspaper reported her as a prostitute. But
15?
Yes, but her family was like, if she was, we didn't know anything about that. So I think the police were just like, oh, black female on the streets, she's a prostitute.
Yep.
So
That is definitely probably. Also, where was the body found?
exactly, it was 1312 Paseo.
That's roughly the same area of where near Troost and
And that's what the police said, that she worked on Troost as a prostitute. But how are they getting this information? I don't know. A lot of the victims were people who worked or were found on Troost. Like, not necessarily their bodies found, but they would frequent that area.
Yeah.
In February of 1981, Gilyard attacked his ex-wife on 2 separate occasions. In the first one, he knocked out her 2 front teeth. And in the second, he stabbed her in the hand with an ice pick. He was arrested and charged with 3rd-degree assault, but was let go on a suspended sentence and probation.
Jesus, how could you give probation? And third degree assault is, correct me if I'm wrong, that's not very high on the assault list, is it? You got 3rd-degree murder, and then you have 1st-degree murder. This should be 1st-degree assault at the least. That's he did an ice pick, and guess what you can do with an ice pick? Mobsters did it all the time. There's a reason there's that trope. And piano wire. He should have been put away with the rapes.
Next was 17-year-old Margaret Miller. Oh, and I should clarify, Stacy Swafford, the first victim, she was white, 17-year-old white. Gwendolyn.
17?
Yes.
Why did my brain skip out on that detail? Come on.
Yeah.
I'm noticing a trend here, pedo. Jesus friggin' Christ.
Gwendolyn was the 15-year-old. She was a black female. Margaret Miller was a black female. She was found May 9th, 1982. And she was found near 37th and Garfield. It is reported that she was working as a prostitute on Troost Avenue. Take that with a grain of salt. I don't know. She was strangled, obviously. In like May of 82, Gilyard went to prison it was actually for theft. Nothing related to any of these
Jeez.
horrible crimes. But in January 10th of 1983, he was paroled and then soon returned to prison after making bomb threats. But I could not find how long he was out on parole because everything I found just said a short time after. So there are some victims in 1983 that could be linked to him, but if he was in prison, obviously not, but I can't find if he was out for sure or not.
I love when we do research and like we're like, okay, but how long? But how,
yeah,
a little time after, but how long?
I tried so hard to find that out. Could not find it.
It is a thing when you're trying to do research.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating. So you're like, okay, great, and you start to get into it, and you're like,
yeah. He was released again in late 1985 after these bomb threat charges. And in January of 1986, he got a job as a garbage man for Deffenbaugh Disposal Service. Then, in March 14, 1986, Catherine Berry was found. She was suffering from mental illness after her third child. She gave birth to her third child, and she had a breakdown and went to the streets of Kansas City. She was not a prostitute. She just had a mental breakdown and didn't know what to do, I guess,
Yeah.
and stayed at the homeless shelter and things like that. So this is, let's see, a few months after he was released.
right.
She was murdered. She was discovered at an abandoned public works building with a nylon stocking around her neck. She was covered with leaves and a piece of plywood. And so this is the first victim that he has ever tried to hide. And also, she was another white female. And she was older than the other ones, too. She was 34.
34, white, female.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I wonder why he would try to hide that.
There's speculation that it's because she was not a prostitute, so he actually felt a little bit of remorse.
I think part of it is that he was just like, I just got this new job, just got out of jail.
That makes more sense.
She's white
Mm-hmm.
and middle-aged and not a prostitute.
Yeah.
Cops
Somebody
are gonna
might care about her.
Somebody might care.
Yeah.
She's white, so the cops are going to be more like, okay, cool. Well, she's not a prostitute. Who murdered this person?
Yeah.
Why did they get murdered? Let's actually try to find them.
Yeah, which is sickening. But yeah, that makes way more sense than he had remorse. So the next one is Naomi Kelly, 23-year-old black female, found August 16th of 86.
Was she also tried to hide? Did he try to hide her?
No.
Okay.
She was dumped in just a downtown city park. She was strangled. She was found with a towel tied around her neck and face. The investigation showed that she was a prostitute that worked on Troost Avenue.
Which kind of goes back to what I was saying about that last victim. This one's black and a prostitute. Didn't try to hide because nobody would care.
Right. She was attending a business school in the downtown Kansas City area and taking business courses. She was trying to better her life for herself and her two children. And she, from what I read, she was a sex worker just to make ends meet and get by, temporarily until she could get done with school. Not that the other ones
Didn't matter
and weren't trying to better themselves, but these all are just so sad. Next is Debbie Blevins, 32-year-old white female. Let's see, November 27th, 1986. She was found strangled, her body dumped in the bushes in front of Hyde Park Christian Church at 38th and Wyandotte Street. She had no clothes on except for a pair of pink socks. She died from strangulation. At some point, she got mixed up into drugs, and she left a 9-year-old daughter behind.
That's sad.
Gilyard is also considered a suspect in the 1987 murder of 21-year-old store clerk Paula Davis. This one is not confirmed, but she was found dumped in Ohio, strangled. But a lot of his victims are found without shoes, in particular.
Uh-huh.
And she was found without shoes, and that is why she fit his MO pretty well. So they don't know for sure.
But in Ohio.
But dumped in Ohio, but she was from Kansas City.
Okay.
Next is 36-year-old Ann Barnes, white female. April 17th, 1987, she was found lying on her back near downtown Kansas City. 10 years to the day after his first victim was found. An autopsy revealed she was strangled. She was a housekeeper at St. Mary's Hospital, and she was also an exotic dancer and a known prostitute. Kelly A. Ford, 20 years old, white female, June 9th, 87. She was found strangled and abandoned in Kansas City's Roanoke Park.
Wow.
She was found at the foot of a bluff and nude, except for a white sock on her right foot. Her cause of death was strangulation. The investigation revealed that she worked as a prostitute on Main Street. Next is Angela Mayhew, 19-year-old white female, found September 12th, 87. Her socks and
really ramping up these murders because most of these murders are in 87.
Yeah, well, it started out slower,
Right.
and then it's really quick now.
Now that he's out of jail, he's ramping it up.
June to September, yeah. Her socks and shoes were the only clothing missing. She was found face down on the side of the road by 26th and Genesee Streets. Cause of death, strangulation. That's okay.
How did they not tie these all together?
I know. I don't know. Like I said before, I think it was a matter of them not caring because they're prostitutes, and a lot of them.
Well, even they could have even tied it together to the 133-year-old
Mm-hmm.
and been like, okay, this is obviously all the same person.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference in them would be one was attempted to be hidden.
Yeah. So maybe because she was so different, they just thought it was random and not connected in any way because she was white and older and not a prostitute, and all these other people.
He does have a type for young.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't know. There's no DNA.
Very shoddy police work.
Yes.
From the 80s.
Yes. So that's what makes me think like the police didn't even care to look into it.
He was the trash man. He was cleaning up the streets.
And that is another theory that people say, like maybe the cops were just letting him do their job in a way, like cleaning up the streets by murdering them so that they didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But that's awful to think about, but I don't know. Sheila Ingold is the next 36-year-old white female, found November 3rd, 87.
Okay.
So September to November.
Yeah. Couple months. Thank God, a little bit. It's not as rampant as it was.
She was found inside a van parked outside an auto repair shop at 3740 Troost.
In a van?
In a van. The cause of death was strangulation. She worked as a prostitute on Troost Avenue.
In a van?
And this one is the first one that the police actually started giving a shit for some reason. Because where she was found, it was at that auto repair shop, and the owner of the shop had an interaction with Gilyard, who was interested in the van and was like showing too much interest in this van.
Right. Yes. Oh my goodness. Probably because the body was already in the van.
Maybe, or he knew he was going to use it. I don't know.
It's insane.
Yeah.
But at the same time, even if he had not shown much interest in that van and the body still wound up in that van, prints.
Mm-hmm.
How did the body get in the van?
Yeah. And I couldn't find anything on much of the evidence. All I know is that that's when they started looking into him, because after they find this body, the shop owner's like, hey, there was this weird dude asking about it. And that's how that kind of started.
He had done slipped.
So they did ask him and questioned him about Sheila Ingold. And that's when he gave his DNA for the very first time.
I mean, thank you, but at the same time, like, it took
But
that
he
long.
wasn't arrested for that.
No.
He was let go because of lack of evidence. So, like you said, fingerprints, were there no fingerprints? Was, what the heck? When he was actually arrested in 2004 or whatever and convicted.
I thought it was in 97. Maybe it was in 2004.
He was probably arrested in 97 for something else, but in 2004, when he was convicted of these murders by DNA, they did link her to him with DNA. So there was obviously some physical evidence there.
Yeah.
If there's DNA, you got to think there's probably fingerprints.
Probably.
But did he wear gloves and just not a condom? Maybe. I don't know. Next is Carmeline Hibbs. She went by Carmen. 30 years old, a white female, found December 19th, 87. She was found in a second-story parking lot at 3560 Broadway. She was missing all of her clothing except her shoes. And
Time to change it up.
Yeah, and there were some rumors going around that this serial killer had a foot fetish.
Yeah.
And so I was listening to a podcast the other night. Yeah, where they were like, oh, so he's fine with being known as a serial killer, but not a foot fetish. He's like, oh, no.
Well, I mean, based off the Pierce Morgan interview, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
It's certain things he was not happy about.
He wasn't happy about being called a serial killer either, but, like, that's why you change up your MO, because you don't want to be associated with a foot fetish. Okay. I don't know. That's just a theory.
Or, I mean, he probably was trying to change it up because he was like, oh, I almost got caught from the van. Let's try and change it up so they think it's a copycat.
Yeah, that too could be. Her cause of death was strangulation. She was supposedly a prostitute that worked on Main Street. Helga Kruger was found strangled with a towel in Kansas City. She was white female. This was in February of 1989. She was an Austrian immigrant.
Was she a prostitute?
They did not consider her a prostitute, but was a convicted extortionist.
And also an immigrant.
Yeah.
Even white, but immigrant.
Yeah. Yeah. That one was added later. She was confirmed to be his victim and linked through DNA, but that one was added in 2006, so it was much later. Then,
once they were able to start tying everything up with DNA.
Yeah. 29-year-old white female Connie Luther was found January 11th, 1993. She was laying in a snowdrift. She was found by a passing motorist. She had a shoestring tied around her neck, and she was found at 25th and Allen Terrace. Cause of death was strangulation. The investigation alleged that she was a prostitute from Main Street.
Of course.
Oh, man. Luther was among 5 children being raised by a single mother. Their mother died a year before Luther was found murdered. It's just awful.
Imagine how the family must feel about that.
Awful.
That's awful.
In 1996, in July, Gilyard's neighbor went to the police claiming that she had been sexually harassed by him since September of 1995. No charges were brought against him, and the woman moved away soon after. So that occurred after his last known victim. Connie Luther is his last known confirmed victim. So,
how many unconfirmed victims do we have?
I can't even say for sure because of the timeline with if he was in jail or not stuff.
Oh, so we'll have to actually dig and we could do an unconfirmed kill list in the next episode.
I listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that I believe are, and then there's a potentially 2 or 3 more.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, but the other 2 or 3 more are during a time when he might have been incarcerated, but I can't find for sure.
Still 10. That's still 7 to 10 people.
Yeah.
On top of the 13?
And the 7 that I listed that I believe he could have done were, let's see, 1, 2, 5 of them were alleged prostitutes that worked on Troost.
Of course.
And 2 were they frequented areas used by prostitutes.
Do you think part of the reason why he killed the prostitutes is so that he didn't have to pay them?
Maybe. He was obsessed with money.
Because if you go, hey, yeah, I'll pay you. We'll do the deed, I'll pay you. You'll be back with your pimp. And then you go do your deed, and then you just kill them.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay them.
All right. And obviously nobody cares, so he knows he can get away with it.
At what point do you think the pimps would be like, no, you pay in advance?
Maybe they were females that worked as their own boss. I don't know how often that happens. But maybe they didn't have a pimp or...
Maybe? Yeah, no,
I don't know.
I don't know.
So...
Insane. And it's kind of interesting because even before, a few weeks before he was arrested, he had some neighbors move in like across the street from him.
Mm-hmm.
And they immediately did not like him, which is funny because everybody, like everyone at his job were like, oh, he was great. We loved him. He's a great dude. And then his neighbor's like, no, like our first day we were moving in and he's like, yo, come over. I want to show you guys something. And shows them like guns and say, you come on our lawn, we shooting you.
Yeah.
Just to find out a few weeks later, who your neighbor really is.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Like, just to know the difference of how you can show people who you are. Like, he made everybody at work love him.
Yeah. Two-sided. Completely.
Completely two-sided. I mean, he made his fourth wife love him.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, he's also a convicted felon.
Right.
How did he get those guns?
I'm going to lay out a little timeline. So the known victims, 12 of them were murdered between 1977 and 1989.
Okay.
He was in prison from May 17th of 82 until January of 83 when he was paroled for a short time. And we don't know if he was arrested that same year. I would presume it would be that same year, but I don't know how long. And I mean, with how fast he was killing people, he could have been out a day and had another victim.
Or two.
Yeah. He was in prison until late 1985 and then started work at the trash company January of 86. After living with Jackie Harris, which is his fourth wife, and supposedly love of his life.
Love of his life?
They lived in Los Angeles for a short period of time, and they were married in Las Vegas, Nevada, May of 1991, after which they returned to Los Angeles and lived there for over a year. So I would like to know if there's more victims in Los Angeles, because that's why the killings stopped. They were married in May of 91, and they moved to Los Angeles shortly after. Doesn't say exactly when, for about a year. And then when he came back to Missouri, that's when he murdered his 13th victim. So he could have been there up until 93. So it is assumed that he stopped killing in 93, but he could have just modified his MO.
Yeah, I mean,
because they weren't exactly the same every single time. I mean, he did strangle them every single time, but he changed it up with what he was using, what age his victim was, what race his victim was. Okay, so how about we stop there and do the trial, DNA evidence, and potential victims next time?
sounds great, because I'm also going to try and see if I can literally track down how many deaths happened in LA, because that's intense. There's definitely got to be a couple more. There's no way he was like, I'm in the city of sin and not going to commit murders
Right.
in LA.
Yeah. So I'll send you what I have, like the old Kansas City Star clippings and stuff. And I think I found his address from California. So, because he liked to kill around his area.
And it was in LA.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Send me
well,
that address.
yes, I will.
Zillow that shit. See how much it's worth.
Yeah, and I can show you his address here, Kansas City.
Hey.
It's been owned like 2 or 3 times since he was arrested.
I would love to do an interview with his fourth wife.
I know.
Or even any of his wives.
What do you know? Yeah. The first ones are like the first 3 are so traumatized.
That's probably not traumatize them again, though.
Yeah. I feel so bad for them. Like, especially that first one that was like, oh, he was so sweet until we got married. And then I was living in a fucking nightmare.
Yep.
He made her stay in one room of the house for 5 years. Only that she could only go into the bedroom.
For what purpose, I wonder?
Yeah. A poor lady.
Ugh.
So anyway, thank you for joining us through this nightmare of a case. I am so sorry that it might have been a little bit of a squirrel episode because of the recording mishap.
And my brain just jumping and marbling from place to place at one point. It was quite entertaining. Not even entertaining. Bad.
It's so much information, and he's such a horrible human being.
Yeah.
That it's kind of hard to stay focused in one area because it's like, oh, and then he did this, and oh my gosh, he's probably done this, and
yeah, it's hard to ping. It's hard not to ping pong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, stay tuned for the next episode where we will go over the trial, the evidence, the DNA evidence, and maybe some potential victims too.
I am excited for it.
And I would just like to say again that even if someone is a prostitute, whatever they choose to do with their life should not have any effect on how police do their jobs and how much value a person's life has. I mean, yeah.
And as it was stated before, like, just because you have trauma and you've been abused does not mean you have to become an abuser.
Exactly.
Or molester or rapist or a murderer.
A lot of those girls that were working on the streets, they were probably abused.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were trying to make a better life for themselves.
They were trying to get out of the
just
situation.
Comes in and fucking snuffs the life out of them and takes that chance away from them. And it's just heartbreaking. So I just want to say RIP to all of the victims, and hopefully they're resting in peace. Hopefully them and their families can feel a sense of justice finally. They'll never get closure. And It's just horrible.
No, yeah, it's this episode has been literally a merry-go-round of emotions.
Yeah.
And
My dog wants her dinner.
it's time, I think.
It is time. So thank you for joining us. If you would like to email us, you can do so at historyandmysterykcpod@gmail.com. And check out our Facebook group. Facebook is History and Mystery KC Pod. And check out the Patreon if you would like to donate to the show. It will make it better. Hopefully, eventually get us some better equipment so we can sound better. Yeah, for $2 a month, you can hear all of the episodes ad-free, because I will eventually be putting ads in the Spotify episodes eventually. I don't know how to do it. I haven't figured that out yet. Until next time, stay aware, alert, and alive.
We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.